Let's talk to a Conservative MP right now. Gareth Bacon is here. He's the MP for Orpington. Gareth, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. I know we're going to talk about Sadiq Khan and London, but a couple of quick things on the Tory party in general. I mean, I was just talking to John Rentoul, who is a card-carrying Tony Blair supporter, aficionado, whatever you want to call him. He's convinced that it's not a shoo-in for Keir Starmer by any stretch of the imagination. What's the mood in the party at the moment with Rishi Sunak?
Well, I would be inclined to agree with that. I mean, Rishi has calmed things down, which I think was very much necessary. I think it's been a year of turbulence, much of it self-inflicted, and I think Rishi's been a very calming influence on the party. I think his economic policy will need some time to bear fruit, but I think it will bear fruit. And the thing about the lead that Labour have in the opinion polls is not about them. Keir Starmer's not connecting with the general public. They don't suddenly have a load of really good people on the front bench. They don't have a load of policies that people can connect with. It's about Tory infighting. That's why they've got their lead. And I think the more focus there is on Labour, you read out that quote from somebody in North London just now, it's completely right. We don't know what Labour stand for on any single issue. So I think the more people focus on Labour, the more they're going to see things that they don't really like. So I think there's all to play for.
Yeah.
And I agree with John Rentoul's analysis about when the election is likely to be. I think October 2024 is the most likely landing zone. And that's plenty of time. I mean, if you go back 20 months from where we are today and think about what was going on in the world at that time, it seems like a very long time ago. So 20 months forward, a lot can happen in that time. So I think it's all to play for.
Well, that's right. And also, the strikes, I don't think are having as much of an effect as the striking workers would like them to have. I think as a nation, we're a lot more resilient than people think. And I also think that the economy is bound to improve rather than get worse, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, the strikes have been caused by inflation, but it's a political strike, these things. They're not really about money. They are and they're not. Partly it's about union bosses wanting to try and bring down a Conservative government, and they're using inflation as their tool to do that. If the government were to roll over and give in to, say, 20% for nurses or double-figure pay rises for train drivers, then the next people to go on strike will be the teachers or it'll be somebody else. And it goes on and on and on. And it's not just this series of pay rounds. There'll be another one in a year's time and another one and another one, all of which will feed inflation and all of which will make the country increasingly ungovernable. So the government needs to do what it's doing at the moment and stand firm on those.
No, fair enough. Just a bit of breaking news for everybody. A third man has been arrested on suspicion of the murder of footballer Cody Fisher, who was stabbed to death in a Birmingham nightclub on Boxing Day. That's a statement from West Midlands Police. We'll bring you more on that as we can. A third man arrested on suspicion of the murder of Cody Fisher on Boxing Day. Gareth, let's talk a bit about Sadiq Khan. He's obviously a man who had at one time very much ambitions to be the next leader of the Labour Party. He's now said that he wants to run for a third term as Mayor of London, which horrifies me, and I'm sure horrifies an awful lot of people listening to this show. Because he is determined, isn't he, to put more taxes on drivers, to make it more expensive for people who work using a vehicle, and to make life literally very unpleasant for people.
Yes, he is. I mean, the ultra-low emission zone extension is an appalling proposal. Because, of course, it won't just hit outer London. It will hit people that live outside London just as hard. So there was a debate in Westminster Hall last week called by my colleague Gary Johnson, who's the MP for Dartford. And he made the point that Greater London's boundary is not a straight line, it's jagged.
Right.
So somebody living in his constituency could be driving a short distance, 2-3 miles, in a straight line, starting outside the zone, accidentally cross over inside the zone, and end up at their destination outside the zone without realising they crossed the boundary.
Right.
They could get hit by a £180 fine for that. And if they're doing it on the way back again, perhaps another day or whatever, they could get hit again. So the lady that cuts my hair gave me an example of one of her friends who had to go and visit her sick mother in Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Woolwich. Right. This is inside the existing ultra-low emission zone. And she lives in Kent, and she didn't know the ULEZ was there, drove in twice, I think, in a week, ended up with a fine of more than £300. This is going to be happening more and more and more. And the really chilling thing is that, and Khan has been quite open about this, the really chilling thing is that this is a prelude to what he really wants to do, which is to introduce road user pricing across London at the earliest opportunity. And that would be a proposal to charge all Londoners, regardless of what pollutants their vehicle emits, per mile to drive on the streets of Greater London. That is borderline Stalinist in its approach, in terms of the state controlling your every movement, and I think that's horrifying.
Yes, because basically they would charge you per mile, presumably, so however much you travelled, you would pay more.
Yep, exactly right. And as I've made the case endlessly, Outer London does not have the public transport alternatives that Inner London does.
Yeah.
So hammering people, it also doesn't have the bad air. And Sadiq Khan's own reports show that Outer London areas like Bromley, the borough that I represent, and Bexley, the borough that I used to be a councillor in, they have amongst the best air quality in Greater London, and yet they're going to be having to pay this charge. It really isn't about air quality, it's about money.
No. And I've seen also, I know this is not in London, but certainly in Oxford and I think a couple of other towns as well, starting this rather odd-looking, sort of broken-up zone sort of policing for traffic, so that you can only go to somewhere for 15 minutes and then you have to leave, and then you can't go to another place for 15. I don't know quite what's behind all that, but it is inevitably being driven by the sort of green agenda.
Yeah, it is, and it really is. It's impinging on the way people live their lives. Because if you don't live in a big city metropolis with very good public transport connections, now Inner London does have that, but where I represent really doesn't. I mean, we do have buses, but buses aren't A to B, and they're not particularly reliable out in Orpington. We have farms, we have country lanes, we have villages. And we don't have things like the Elizabeth line, we don't have the tube, we don't have the tram. And yet we're being expected to pay this charge for no reason at all, because it doesn't have bad air there. And Sadiq Khan's own impact assessment shows that the ultra-low emission zone being extended to Greater London boundary will have absolutely no impact on air quality at all.
No.
He uses what's like moderate to negligible in his own report.
Right.
So, why on earth is he doing this if it's not just about money?
So, well, exactly right. I mean, it's just a very thinly veiled disguise to keep TfL going, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And the amounts of money that he can raise are eye-watering. It's estimated up to £2.5 million per day will be raised just in the charge. And when you add the fines on top, because a lot of people won't realise that they should be paying, and they'll get hit by a big fine, he's raising the fine level from £160 to £180. If you pay it within the 14 days, it'll still be £90. It's been estimated that he could raise as much as £390 million in the first year just from fines, which is an eye-watering.
Yeah, that really is incredible. And I mean, isn't the answer then to make sure the Tory party puts up a candidate that can beat him at the next election?
Yes, I mean, ideally, getting Sadiq Khan out of City Hall would be a very desirable thing to do, but it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, if you look at the electoral demographics in London, even in 2019, which was a great year for the Conservative Party nationally in terms of making gains all over the country. I mean, Tony Blair's old seat now has a Conservative MP in it, for example. Yeah. In London, the dial didn't move an inch. The Labour Party have in excess of 40 seats in London out of the 72. We only have 21. So when you look at the London Council balance, Labour are heavily dominant in London. The idea that we can simply magic a candidate up who could beat Sadiq Khan is going to be a very tough ask. I think he's doing his best to help us because the ultra-low emission zone is not popular, particularly in Outer London, and I think he could mobilise the Conservative vote. But yes, I mean, let's find a candidate who can beat him. That's the ideal solution. Yes,
because actually, Sean Bailey came a lot closer, I think, than a lot of people figured that he would in the last election. So maybe with a bit more backing from Downing Street or from, Conservative sort of central office, it could happen.
Yeah, the party needs to take London seriously. And I think it's a fair criticism to say that in recent years it's perhaps been less taken seriously than it should be. So finding a grade A candidate and putting a lot of weight behind that person would be something I would particularly welcome.
Yes. Good to talk to you, Gareth. Thank you very much.